What if I told you that you could reclaim hours of time and sanity back each week just by changing when you handle household stuff? Today, I'm going to be breaking down for you what I call my COO household time, and you're going to hear how it will change your life. Hey, friends, welcome back to Work-Life Harmony. I will say, I wish I'd discovered this system sooner. For years, I was that person that would allow myself to be constantly refocused or interrupted by householdy stuff all week long. Now, I'm not talking about chores like doing the dishes after dinner, all right? I am talking about the stuff that just comes at us that sneaks in all day long, right? The paperwork that comes in, the stuff from school that comes in, the email that you need to gather information on to respond to, the bills that need to get paid, the portals that need, like all of that kind of stuff, right? And what I did for years is I would either stop what I was doing or every single day spend time handling those things. Because if I didn't do them daily, I would start to feel like stressed or behind because I wasn't feeling like I was staying on top of them. But here's what I finally figured out. Most of that stuff, most of the stuff that I was allowing to derail me or just pile on every single day weren't things that actually needed to be done in that given day. But it felt urgent because I didn't have a plan or a system or a place to put it all. So when I finally had that wake up call, I decided to try something totally radical. And bottom line is, I handle very, very little of it during the week anymore. And it has changed everything. So today here, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what I call my household COO time. I was sharing this with a bunch of our students several months ago, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is gold. So I figured I need to come out here and share it with all of you. And I'm going to be walking through how I batch a lot of what is typically falls in that invisible household management stuff into a very visible, focused block once on the weekend. And when I made this shift, I'm explain exactly how this works. My week changed, my energy levels, my stress changed, and quite frankly, got rid of a bunch of resentment that I had harboring as well. Now, before we jump into this, I do have a favor to ask for all of you. If you are a fan here of this show, the best thing that you can do to ensure that we are able to show up here every single week and keep it going is to take 15 seconds out of your day, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a review. That does wonders for the show. All right, so let's dive into first what I really want to give a good definition of what I call my household COO time. Now, COO is a corporate jargon, stands for Chief Operating Officer, as opposed to CEO, which is the Chief Executive Officer. So a COO of an organization is the one that keeps the operations running smoothly, right? There's a lot of typically invisible work that goes on there. They're in charge of the systems, the processes, checking in to make sure things are getting done, right? And if you are a mom like I am, chances are you're probably falling into that default COO role. Some people call it the primary caregiver, some people call it the default parent. I just like to call it, I am the household COO. Our family knows that. We joke about it, and it's a term that we all understand what it means when I'm spending time doing that. So for me, my household COO time is a dedicated block of time. On average, at the stage of life I'm in right now, it's about a 2-hour block of time that I schedule every single weekend. Notice I'm saying weekend. I intentionally choose the weekend. Other people have chosen other times that work better for them. But it is when I sit down at one time and handle all the household coordination stuff that came in during that week that needs to be addressed. All right, so I'm going to give you some examples of the type of stuff that I'm talking about here. Again, this isn't the I'm going and doing dishes after breakfast. I'm talking about the emails from the school, the extracurricular activities, maybe acknowledging messages coming in from physician portals, all of that kind of stuff, right? So all the digital information, messages, announcements, portals, scheduling, etc. Maybe there are bills that come in that aren't set up on auto pay that need to be done. And some of this stuff could be monthly. Like another example in the financial thing is my husband does the day to day, I do the monthly financial reporting. That's a household COO time. Maybe there's forms that need to be filled out or signed, whether digital or in paperwork that needs scanning and filing, right? Maybe you've got stuff you need to scan or paperwork that needs to be handled and filed. This can also include physical errands, right? Maybe there's returns that need to be done. Now, I don't include our weekly grocery shopping in this. Our meal planning and all that is outside of this window. But sometimes there's other online errands, right? Needing to drop off something at the dry cleaners or pick up a birthday present, that kind of thing. And then online ordering as well. So when requests come in for mom, I need X, Y, or Z, I let it all pile up and I can go in and do one like Amazon order over the week as well. Now, let me make sure you understand what I'm not including in my household COO time. All right. If something comes in that has a due date that can't wait until the weekend, those are the things that I will need to address during the week. And I have a system that I teach inside the top program for handling that. This is what lives in what I call the planning for uncertainty time. All right, I'm not going to get into that here. That's one of the key differentiators in my planning approach. So I just wanted to make sure you, the listener, understand I do have a bucket of time and I teach people how to build this into their plans for things that come in during the week that simply can't wait until the weekend. All right, but when you put this in play, you start to discover most of that household COO stuff oftentimes does not have an urgent deadline. All right. On a Thursday, just the other week, my daughter on a Thursday was like, hey, we have a school project coming in. I need to get one of those trifold things. Can we go? And I was like, well, when is this project due? Well, it's due in 2 weeks. I'm like, great, we'll get the trifold this weekend, right? I'm not going to go to the store on Thursday to get it when I know you're not even going to be ready for it on Thursday or Friday. The other things that are not going into it, again, any forms that need to be filled out that don't have to be happened in the moment, right? The emails that don't need to be responded to. Someone sending me an email asking if I can be a volunteer for something 2 months from now. I don't need to sit down and put thought and respond to that in the moment. It can wait until my household COO time. Here's the kind of bottom line rule. If it doesn't have a due date during the current Monday through Friday, I don't address it. Everything else is going to get rolled up into that household COO time. Now, again, I'm talking specifically about household COO stuff, not things for work. All right. So I want to kind of talk you through what I used to do versus what I'm doing now and kind of talk through how I evolved into this. So before, I used to try and have a chunk of time late afternoon, kind of after school, but before dinner, where I would try and get through all those things and handle them all. Right. And it felt very chaotic and very, very stressful. And if it was an afternoon where I didn't have that window because maybe I was out, driving to kids' activities or something like that, I would try and squeeze it in when I was having lunch, or I would allow my work to get derailed from doing it, or I would like do it first thing the next morning. I was putting it into my planner, but trying to jump in and out of that mode was very chaotic feeling. Right. And I would find myself in that like little window in the afternoon saying, okay, I'm going to go, or right after dinner, I'm going to go back into my office, just get those couple things done. Right. And it had that feeling of like those open loops are out there and I just needed to close them because I couldn't relax. My brain doesn't do very well with open loops. They make me very anxious. And so I am wired in a way where I feel uncomfortable when things are piling it up. So I would just find a way to create space every day to try and handle those things just to get rid of my own mental discomfort, even though none of those things had to be handled that day. And so one weekend I was doing my weekly planning and I noticed it was a very full week. And I was starting to see, wow, I'm going to have a really hard time protecting a little block of time every day to handle those household COO things. And I was doing my weekly reflection of like what worked well, what didn't work well, what caused stress that week. And I was noticing that was causing a lot of stress and anxiety for me. And so I thought to myself, what if instead I just let all of that pile up all week and handled it in one chunk over the weekend? Right? Because Here's what else was subtly happening that I didn't realize. Me squeezing it in all week, I was doing it quietly. Nobody was aware of it outside of myself. And I was starting to get kind of resentful about it. Like, nobody sees that I'm doing this every single day. Like, nobody is valuing this work that I'm doing. My spouse has no clue that I just spent 45 minutes on this one school thing, right? Not to his fault. It's just, I just would jump in and handle it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try something different. And holy cow, it was life changing. And I've been doing it ever since. Because here's the other benefit. Not only did it mean I wasn't in that little window of reactive time every day, even though I planned for it, it was still felt very stressful. I found it took far less time to let it all pile up and sit down and do it at once. So here's the logistics of what this actually looks like in practice. I have a dedicated bin in my office. It's actually in a cabinet behind me that is just, think of it like an old fashioned inbox tray. Any paperwork that comes into the house goes in there. Now, I tried to train my family to put them there. Instead, we got close. They will come in and just put it on the chair in my office. And so if I go in to see that there, I just go put it in the inbox, which I am fine with that because it's just easier. I'm like, oh, just dump it on my desk, and I just put all of that stuff there. All right, so I'm not staring at it all week, so it doesn't make me feel anxious, but I know it's all in one place. So whether it's bills, mail, things that I need to read, whatever, it just sits there until my weekend COO time. Now, for emails, I have a folder in email that's just labeled Household COO. All right, and anything that comes in that's householdy related, not business related, right? Not the pink bee related, just gets moved there. When I'll look at it and be like, don't have to do it before this weekend. I just move all of those emails into my Household COO folder. All right. If it's catching up on school emails, oh, you need to make sure you sign this slip sometime in the next 2 weeks for the field trip, whatever, all of it just goes in there. I can do the quick scan of, is this urgent before the weekend? Nope, it goes in there. Now, if it is a task or a to-do that's not tied to paper or email, right, it gets written in my planner. So if I am recognizing, oh, I need to go buy a birthday present this weekend, in my planner on either Saturday or Sunday, I'm writing down, buy birthday present, all right? I create appointments with myself for those things as well. Now, the timing of this, of when I actually handle my household COO time, I want to make sure you understand it's not set in stone. All right, my life is too fluid, and chances are yours are as well. So it's not like I say, okay, every single Saturday from 9 to 11, I'm doing it. Nope. When I do my weekly planning for the upcoming week is when I'm looking at what does my week look like and where does it make sense for me to do my household COO time. Right? If I have a particularly intense week, a very brain intensive week, I know I don't like going into my office on Saturday. I like to just avoid it. And so I'll probably schedule my household COO time for Sunday. On the flip side, maybe we are doing something, the whole family is doing something great on a Sunday, in which case then I'll be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to schedule that for Saturday. Or maybe we're traveling. Maybe we're going out of town or having company in for the weekend. At that point, then I am finding time to carve it out during Monday through Friday. Maybe I'm doing it on a Friday afternoon. Maybe we're even having to sit down as a family and say, hey, we're going to have to do some of this in the evening. All right, so it doesn't have to be this rigid set in stone. You do it at the exact same time every single week. Now, if you want to and that works for you, great. And some weeks it's only 45 minutes, right? But I'm seeing it as it's coming in. So I have an idea of how much time I need to protect to be able to handle all of that. Now, here's the win of this, because you could implement everything that I've just said. But if you don't do this other part, which is the communication part, you may find yourself still feeling a little resentful. Because when I first started Household COO time, I didn't really sit down with my family and say, okay, we're shifting things up. Like, here's how things are going to go. I'm going to carve out this chunk of time. I'm spending a lot of time handling. I just quietly did it, as so many women are wired to do. And then what happened is there was one day where I was in my office doing Household COO time, and a family member of mine was like, I thought you said you didn't work on the weekends. And I was like, I don't. They're like, well, why are you in your office, every single weekend? Because I've been doing it for a couple months now. And I was like, well, I'm not working. I said, I'm doing household stuff. I was like, here's everything that I'm doing. And I started listing out that I'm doing this for school. I'm dealing with this for this activity. I'm handling all this paperwork for an upcoming doctor's appointment. I'm scanning this stuff that we need to save digitally for taxes. Like I started vomiting it all. They're like, whoa. And I realized I was still harboring the resentment of doing it all because it was still invisible to everybody else. So the final game changer here wasn't just the batching it all up and having this household COO time. It was getting it on our family communication center and making it visible and kind of training, if you will, the whole family, myself included, to this new way of operating. So it goes on. We use the Skylight calendar for our family communication center. That chunk of household COO time each week, once I schedule it in my calendar, I share it to the Skylight calendar. And then when something comes in, right, if a family member brings me something that requires household COO time, I tell them, okay, I'm not going to do that today. I'll be doing that on, my next household COO time. You can see it on the calendar. Right now, not everything is asked by other family members, right? The emails, the forms, the whatever. And, my spouse and I tend to go on walks together with our dogs on the weekend mornings. And so usually Saturday morning, I fill in, I'm like, well, here's everything that piled up over the week that I'm going to be, that I've got to go back and manage for household COO time. And I'm not saying it I don't feel resentful as I'm talking about it. I'm not saying it in a nagging way, but it is shining a huge spotlight on how much time these things take. And as I go through, hey, here's what's going on in household COO time with my husband, it gives him the opportunity and us the opportunity to talk about it for him to say, hey, you know what, I'll go ahead and do that. Or, oh, tell you what, just give me all the stuff. I'll do the scanning and send it to you. Right. And so now what had been this very invisible load, I'm still managing the bulk of it, but it's very visible. And there's no longer the resentment of it feeling like I'm doing all of this and nobody's noticing it. The family understands the scope of it. And instead of things just magically happening when requests come in and I say, I'll handle it during household COO time, right? The more they hear that, the more they're going, oh, yeah, there is a lot to keeping the house running, right? It doesn't feel like this invisible thing that I'm just magically making happen. And so that little part of the communication has really helped lighten that resentment load that often comes with being the default parent or the household COO. And occasionally, when someone, usually my daughter, will ask, Mom, did you do that thing yet? And I'll say, no, because it doesn't have to be done until this weekend. I'm doing it during household COO time, right? So again, we are all learning this system together. We're all using the same language. It's making it very visible. And then it's giving me the opportunity to look at it comprehensively at the start of the weekend and then deciding, hey, am I going to transfer ownership of some of this? And does it all have to be me? And so many things have shifted ever since I started doing this. First, during the week, my focus is back, right? I don't feel like I'm constantly being interrupted or having to fit these things in during times that don't work well. My brain is far less fragmented. And ladies, I'm in menopause. It's hard for me to do things well later in the day. It just is. So it's good for me to not have things that I need to be doing, right before or right after dinner. Again, the resentment level way down. It is also far more efficient for me to sit down and do it once. Like think about even just scanning stuff, right? I don't want to be dealing with that 3 times a week. I'd rather sit down at once and go, okay, here's the 7 things I'm going to scan and go get them filed. That was far more efficient and takes less time than jumping in and out multiple times during the week. I also have my boundaries again, right? This is a very subtle boundary of just saying, I'm not doing that right now. Here's the compartment for it. It can wait until then. I mean, a good way of thinking about that compartmentalizing is, what if every single time you had one dirty piece of clothes, you went and ran it through the washing machine? Of course, we wouldn't do that. We wait until we have enough clothes to fill up a load, right? Far more efficient. This is the same concept. And then just my daily evening stress levels are way down because I'm not reacting or responding to those things every day, even though I had a plan for them, it was still just keeping I think those cortisol levels running a little high. And so now when the paperwork comes in, because I have a process, because I have a place for it to go, I'm no longer feeling anxious about loops that feel like they're open. They felt open because I didn't have a system. So now that I have the system, the loop's closed. Oh, it's coming in. Great. I'll get it done this weekend. Loop is closed. So that low riding anxiety about it is gone. So this is something that anybody can implement for themselves, right? So first, decide where your stuff is going to pile up, the paper, the digital, or the tasks, right? So I mentioned I have a bin, I have my email folder, I have my planner, right? Then get in the habit of, as things come in, does it have to, household COO, does it have a due date before this weekend or before my next COO time? Great. If not, it'll wait, right? And move it over. Then you need to schedule the time, right? And then finally, you need to communicate it, right? This is a great process for the whole family to understand and be a part of. And this way, if there's physical errands during the weekend, right, this can be divided and conquered. Some of them my spouse can do, some I do. We are counting down the months until our daughter has her own driver's license. You better believe she will be a part of running errands for household stuff on the weekends as soon as she is able to do that without it involving one of us. Right? Now, recognize the first week you do this, it might feel a little bumpy. It might feel a little weird. It might feel uncomfortable letting things pile up, right? And your brain might be still going, let's just handle it now. But resist the urge and give it a try. I promise you by the second week, it's going to start to feel amazing. All right. So the bottom line is this: you do not need to let those household COO things derail you every single day, all week long. Let it pile it up, schedule it, make it visible. When you do that, you will have the joy of watching your stress levels and your resentment drop. Now, again, I mentioned this is just one example of things that I teach and that women are learning inside of the TOP program. TOP stands for Time Management, Organization, and Productivity. The TOP program is the #1 time management system for women. It is designed specifically for the realities of our life, such as handling all the household COO stuff, right? And this is just one tiny tool, if you will, inside of the entire framework. The entire framework is all about helping you do the most important things in a stress-free way, right? And that is what we are all about. And if you would like to learn more about the program, you can absolutely head over to thetopprogram.com. It is open for enrollment at any time. It is a course that once you've invested in it, you have access to for the rest of your life, right? Because this is a system you will rely on that you will be able to use through all the different seasons. And I kind of want to leave you with one final thought about this. And it was something that was very hard for me to get my head around. Invisible work will stay invisible until you decide to make it visible. Learn from my mistakes. Don't make it visible by snapping and completely losing it to your family when you've simply had enough. That was the old way for me to do it. Is there would hit a day where I just hit my breaking point, I'd snap, I'd lose it, and nothing would change. So if you can find a more productive, efficient, and valuable way of making it visible, which this household COO time has become, right? That's sustainable change. If any of that invisible work needs to have a name, it needs to have a system, and it needs to be communicated in a way that is making it more visible. We all deserve to have weeks and days that aren't just constantly being derailed and interrupted by stuff that actually doesn't need to be addressed in the moment. And this is one of the ways that we can make that happen. All right, friends, happy planning. I'll see you back here next week.